Operation Eagle was to be a crackdown on the rebellious Egyptian police. Taking advantage of the Muslim holy day, Brigadier Exum of the 3rd Infantry Brigade ordered his troops to surround the Ismailia police buildings. At 6:20 a.m., a British loudhailer van called on the Egyptian police to surrender.
Centurion tanks, armoured cars of the Royal Dragoons and men of the Lancashire Fusiliers prepare to attack Egyptian police headquarters.
The staff involved felt that the show of force by having tanks and armoured cars would be enough to encourage the police to surrender. Unfortunately, what it did, it just stimulated them to react.
My Enfield rifle had only 10 bullets. How could I resist the British forces equipped with tanks, field guns and machine guns?
A young Egyptian police officer, Mustafa Rifat, decided to confront the British. Brigadier Exum gave the police 5 minutes to surrender the building.
I told him, if you are going to stay 50 years, not 5 minutes, this is our land. We shall not leave it. You are going to leave it, not us. I said, we insist not to surrender. So when I go inside, I told them, everyone go to the positions. We are going to fight.
سمعت ضرب طلقات فخدت الكاميرا.
I heard shots, so I grabbed the camera.
مصطفى رفعت كان جوه.
I photographed Mustafa Rifat with his men stacking up the sandbags, making fortifications around the building. And with that, the British knew they were not going to surrender. Obviously, we felt the terror of the situation, but we decided to die as martyrs for the sake of our homeland.
The tank went in, smashed down the gate.
The Egyptian police were firing out of the window, so as their arms came out, I took a shot.
You are walking on bodies, screaming here, screaming there.
At 11 a.m., Mustafa Rifat received a phone call from his government's interior minister. The British had forgotten to cut the phone lines.
He said, what's going on? I said, the British attack us. Look and here, boom, boom. We have 11 soldiers killed. And he said, what are you going to do? I said, we are going to stay till we die. He said, God bless you and be God with you. And the telephone was cut.
Headed by tanks, the Lancashires stormed through a breached wall.
Almost room-to-room fighting, which was not very pleasant. They were bowling hand grenades down the corridors. And as you can imagine, if you have grenades being thrown in close quarters in rooms which are packed with soldiers, there were going to be a lot of serious wounds too. Blood everywhere. It was gruesome.
On the roof, Peter Newton found a dozen bodies and a terribly injured police captain.
Was swearing at the British. Bloody British. Why don't you get out of this effing country? You shouldn't be here anyway. It troubled me because to me, the British Empire had been a wholesome thing. We'd given the world so much. To find that he had so much hate there, I just couldn't really comprehend. So it was very sad for the captain. I just hope he did live out a decent life afterwards.
Untrained, undisciplined and easily agitated, these auxiliaries were a constant menace to our men and the people of Ismailia.
Operation Eagle resulted in the deaths of 50 Egyptian policemen, with many more injured and over 800 taken into British custody.
دخلت أنا بقى جوه ابتدوا يشيلوا الجثث في طبعا جثث.
I went inside and saw them removing the bodies, some of them completely disfigured.
قالوا نصور بقى الجثة وش
I had to photograph the bodies' faces one by one so that we may recognize them. That day they established a specially created martyrs' graveyard.
اللي هي مقابر الشهداء.
I returned with Colonel Mallet. When he just go inside, he put his two hands on his head and said, "Oh, what a dirty job we have done." He was very, very sad.
There was something like 90 policemen at that station, armed with no more than old, rickety Lee Enfield rifles. The result was in no doubt. It made the Egyptians throughout the country furious.
Outraged by the British attack, Egyptians took to the streets the next day in protest. Cairo was set ablaze. The ferocious anti-British riots came to be known as Black Saturday.
Clusters of people everywhere on the streets, fuming. They were almost, like maniacs. Terrible rage. Mad at what happened in Ismailia, and they were trying to take their revenge on Western installations. The fury erupted almost spontaneously. And it started with a fire here, a fire there, and then it spread out. There was also a great confectionery shop here called Groppi's. It was Swiss, but they just considered it foreign. The street was strewn with a mix of sweets, cakes, syrup, crazy.
I was playing football for my old school, and we came back to the middle of town. It was all burning. Everything was burning. The opera house was burning, and the Shepherd's Hotel, which was a very famous hotel, was burning.
For the expatriate British community in Cairo, the destruction of places such as the Shepherd's Hotel represented the end of a way of life.
My father had been in Egypt during the war, and he'd been rather taken by it, and I think at that time it was a magnificent hedonistic capital, so the life there was sweet, and he decided to open a bookshop there. It is probably my earliest memory. I was about 4.5, and my father came in, and he stopped in the middle of the carpet very near me, and he said to my mother, "There's a lot of trouble in the city." And she looked up, and she was still continuing to sew, and then he walked over to the window, and he fell down. And so my mother sprang up from the sofa, and the entire content of the sewing box fell across the floor. So there was this extraordinary sort of spray of buttons and beads. It all came past me as I was sitting on the floor playing. And my father began sobbing. It was extremely shocking to me. And there was this plume of smoke coming up from the point where he knew the shop stood. And he got to his feet and he said, "My God, they've burned it."
But most shocking was the brutal murder of British and Western nationals. At the exclusive Turf Club, members were attacked and beaten to death.
They dragged the British out of it, whoever was there. And there I saw something like 11 or 12 dead bodies on the street, British. And raging demonstrators were kicking them around all the time. Terrible, terrible.
More than 700 buildings were destroyed. 9 Britons and 26 Westerners were killed. The political impact was to prove seismic.